Now, grief, loss, sadness, they're very hard things to contend with. So how do you deal with them, or those situations? And what about addictions too? People are addicted to all sorts of things. There's gambling addictions, there's alcoholic addictions, I guess you could say. Also, purchasing. Some people can't get off the internet. They're always buying, and they've got to buy something every week sort of thing, or something along those lines. To explain ways of possibly coping with these issues, I'm pleased to say I have our resident psychologist on the line, Carlos Camacho. G'day, Carlos. How are you?
Good, Dave.
That's good. Yeah, not too bad at all. Long time no talk.
I know, it's been a little while.
This year, I don't know about how you feel, but this year to me is just blinked. It's 3 months till Christmas already. I can't believe it.
I know.
Wow.
It's just gone past. So it always does. I mean, I think, as Einstein says, time is relative. That's been proven. So I think if it depends on your mindset. If you're doing things and you're having fun, it's probably not a bad thing that it seems to go on for quite quickly, because if you were to drag on, it'd probably be because, things aren't working for you. Apparently that's the theories,
I go along with that, because I know when we used to do I used to do a radio show, and once a month we did it live from a club. And, the old saying was a fast show's a good show, because quite often we'd look at the watches and we think, gosh, it's that time already, and because we were having that much fun, you didn't, 3 hours ago like that, and so on. But if it was a slow night, you could tell.
That's exactly right. But it does go by very quickly, and it's very important to organise yourself and make sure we get the best out of the day. Yeah,
very true. Very, very true. Hey, I was thinking about these things, and I had somebody talking to me about it on the radio the other day. I'll go to the addiction part in a minute, but with grief and loss and sadness and that can be all sorts of things. It could be the loss of a family member. It could be the loss of your pet. It could be all sorts of things. Is there something that people can do if they're in those situations so that it's not as painful, shall we say, or things that they can do to help cope in that very difficult time?
There are. The first stage of grief is one that we have to allow ourselves some time to be able to grieve, So it's fine to cry, to talk about it, to think about it enough in order to make sense of it, because that's what the brain does. Grief is just a natural state that the brain goes into in order to make sense of a situation. So if we skip that part, a lot of people do, then it catches up to us later on. So it's important that initial stage that, yes, we might feel emotional, we might want to talk about it a lot, and that's probably a good thing. Yeah. It's best to get it out and to tell the stories of that loved one or the pet or whatever that loss might be, because we found in the last 20, 30 years that it's far, psychologically speaking, it's far better to immediately talk about things. That's why we have that type of counselling where we can debrief in many situations. Where prior to that, the thought was, look, the best is not to talk about it and to keep going with life. But it's definitely a good thing. That's the first stage. Yeah,
because I know, correct me if I'm wrong here, but a lot of people that just don't show any emotion or keep it all bottled in, as you say, it can affect you later on in life. It comes back to you.
Exactly. Yeah. We call that repression in psychology. We repress certain things, but maybe we put them into some psychoanalysts would say that we put them into our unconscious, but it's put into a place in the brain maybe where we use it as a defense mechanism, that it's not there in our conscious life, but it's in the background, and at some point it will come out.
Yeah, the mind's a funny thing, isn't it? I mean, you're dealing with it all the time, so, you must hear and see some strange things. I suppose you never really stop learning about it in many ways.
You never stop learning, my friend. Never. Yeah. It's one of those things that, psychologically speaking, we're still in nappies in theories and research and so forth. The brain is quite a miraculous organ, really, in one way. And so we're still learning as we go along through research, but I think it's always best to just go with what comes natural to oneself. If one wants to cry, one wants to talk about it, do it straight. And you'll find that that's probably the best thing for the body and the mind.
Yeah, instead of, like I can remember in the 70s in particular, if a bloke cried, he was considered to be weak and gay or something like that. But in actual fact, all it was somebody that had emotions and showing them, really. And we accept that these days, but we didn't back in the 70s. It's funny, that.
Yeah. It's one of those things that they're human constructs. We've constructed those type of theories about men, about women, about children, and so forth. But in the end, there's not much difference between the brain of a female and a male. So it's good sometimes to tap into that side, the feminine side, we would say, and allow ourselves to do so. Although the new generation are far better at doing that.
Is that because they've been brought up in that more open society, I guess?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's well known now that the boys especially have to be given that time as well to be able to be themselves rather than impose a certain role or a certain type of personality that we would want them to be. They've got plenty of time to be masculine, but they need to be able to tap into that other side too.
Yeah, I think in the long term they're going to be better people for being able to be that open about things, eh?
100%.
Yeah. So in the case of grief and all that, basically just let your emotions out, and you'll feel a lot better a lot sooner by just sort of not bottling them up inside. If you want to cry, cry.
Exactly, and we need that closure as well, especially with the loss of a loved one or a pet. We need to be able to go through the procedure of allowing them to go, well, physically, one, obviously at funerals and so forth, but also within ourselves to say, I'm happy and I appreciate that the time they were with us rather than mourning the loss. And that's very important in many aspects of life too, because or else we're always just clinging to what we would want in the future rather than appreciate what has come to us through life, through the universe, through God or whatever one has to fall back on. And it also allows us to appreciate other things in life too.
Yeah.
And it might be small things. It may just be that our team didn't make the grand final, but how great that they got to the semis or whatever.
Yeah, I suppose the closure thing you're talking about too, as you mentioned about funerals, and that if it's in the case of a loved one passing away, by having the funeral, then that's sort of like the end of the book, so to speak, in a way. I guess you can shut the book on it, and even though you still got their memories, it closes that episode, I guess. I don't know if that's the right way I'm thinking here or not, but yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I think it allows, at least for that stage, to be able to be closed psychologically, to say, okay, we are finalising that part of our lives and of their lives as well, or it allows us then to go into another stage eventually where we can talk about that person or look at photos and actually smile at the fact that, wow, these were great times and how fortunate I was to be able to live them.
Yeah, very true. And addictions, I mean, I probably, like a lot of people, thought addictions were really just people that were addicted to, say, the poker machines or they were into alcohol and they couldn't live without it and that. But it goes a lot wider than that, doesn't it? Addictions, it can be even, having to go and buy things on the internet every week or something. That's right.
Addictions, they're very complex things because we fall into habits daily. I mean, we all do things in a certain way. I know I love my routine and my structure, and it gives me a certain, I suppose, satisfaction to know, okay, tomorrow I'm going to get up at a certain time, I'm going to do this. And sometimes when that's interrupted, I feel a little bit anxious too. I shouldn't be doing this, or I slept in, or I didn't get my 20-minute walk in, or whatever it may be. So in a way, we are prepared psychologically to form habits throughout life. So our brain loves that. And so the problem is that once we do them and they are detrimental to our lives, then we call them addictions, especially if what we're doing is subtracting more from our life rather than giving us more. And so things like drugs, alcohol, and gambling, they're always going to eventually take more than what they give.
And like addictions, to say, for example, somebody, they're obsessed with, I don't know if it's an addiction or obsession now that I mentioned that word, with going on the internet and, say, downloading online shopping stuff and all that, and just buying almost anything for the sake of, it's like having to satisfy a need or something like that. That's sort of another form of addiction, I guess, isn't it?
It is. You're right. It is a bit of an obsession. So what happens is that usually with things like that we become obsessed with, or if you like, eventually addicted to, there's a certain reward at the end of it, and so that's why we do it. So a lot of people that are obsessed or addicted to buying things on the internet, they love the feeling that, you know, eventually this item's going to come to their mailbox, or they're going to pick it up, or they buy it, and then they have. But we find that the reward, it doesn't last very long, and so then you need to go back and do it again. So it is like a drug in a way, and so we become involved in a cycle that we can't never be satisfied, because the reward is so small. But yes, it's intense at the time, but it doesn't last long. So what we recommend is for people to find rewards that are much more lasting, and so you find that you can look at other things, like, for example, friendships and joining community sports groups or hobbies, or doing things like voluntary work. There's things that we find in life, and not only us, contemporary human beings, but I mean, Plato, for example, talked about this 2,500 years ago, about finding more satisfactions that are long-lasting in life, because they might not be intense, but they're long-lasting, and they continue to provide more to us rather than subtract. So that's the key there.
I love being in the garden, right? I love creating a garden and even just standing there hosing it and everything like that. So in a way, I guess I'm addicted to that. Would I be right in saying that, or is it just a hobby or something?
I think for that is a hobby, and that's a wonderful example, Dave, of a hobby, or if you like to say, if you want to call it an obsession or an addiction, because you could say, oh, I forgot to water the garden, therefore you go to bed and you're a little bit annoyed with yourself, and so you get withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
but the negative effects of not doing it aren't too bad. You know?
It's not going to hurt anybody. Yeah.
That's right. Unlike with alcohol or gambling and other forms of drugs, that they are going to hurt somebody. They're going to hurt yourself, for one, physically, biologically, physiologically, because obviously you're intaking substances that aren't good for you. They only make you feel good, but they're not good for your body or your mind. And also they affect relationships. They affect us financially and so forth. And the garden is a wonderful example, because it provides long-term satisfaction, because you plant things, you see them grow over time. It gives you a certain feeling that you're creating. It's almost an artistic feeling, isn't it?
It is, yeah, because you start with a blank canvas on a lot of occasions, and then you just create it.
That's exactly right. And the watering the garden, we find that water is a wonderful source of calmness.
Yeah.
You find that children, little babies, they just love being in the water, in the baths and so forth. Throughout millennia, our humans, our ancestors have lived near water, whether it be a lake or a river or the ocean. And, of course, it provides a source of food. But it also, I think, we're slightly amphibious in a way, us humans. We need the water, a bit like turtles and other types of animals, that we do, even though we don't need it to live, literally, we do need it for our well-being.
Yeah, that's probably why too. I think a lot of people put on you can get on YouTube the sounds of rain and all that sort of stuff. I know one of my listeners said to me once that he puts it on at night when he goes to bed, the sound of rain falling on the roof, and it goes for a few hours, and that's what helps him go to sleep. It's one of those.
Yeah, because the sound, I think it taps into a certain part of our consciousness, and because we're passed through, genetically speaking, certain things that we just enjoy through in life, and those type of things, when we're connected with nature, it just makes us feel a little bit more comfortable that, yeah, we're living on this earth that provides so much for us, obviously our life, but also the fact that when it rains, you can imagine if you've got crops and so forth, what a great feeling that would be when it rains. I think that's passed on to us, even though most of us aren't farmers and we're not living off the land. I think that throughout time, that's still a certain satisfaction that we get. We don't know why, but I suspect it's because of that, because it's a wonderful feeling when it does rain, because we know that things are going to go well with our crops. We're going to have a source of food and that, maybe, and I think we're also reminded how small we are. That we just hear the rain. You've got the weather around you, the elements, and you're just part of nature, and you're just another living creature on this wonderful earth. It's
like a primeval thing, isn't it, I suppose? Like it takes you back to, I guess, when we were hunters and collectors or whatever. Or maybe, I don't know, but I know what you mean. It's a really nice feeling. Even that smell of the rain, it's just really relaxing and nice. I can relate to that. That's nice.
Yeah. And for some of us that grew up in different situations where maybe we had tin roofs and so forth.
Yeah.
It brings us back to our childhood. I think a good example is the vinyl record, where for most of us that we grew up, times where we listen to vinyl, when we put on a vinyl, we just love that sound. We know it's got a bit of crackling. We know it doesn't sound fantastic like a lot of the production these days through with digital and that, but it provides something else. We just love it because that's what we're used to. We know, that's the sound that I want from music, and a lot of other things are very similar, like reading a book, a real book that you can turn the pages as opposed to an electronic book. And of course, the new generations will be much more equipped and comfortable with these things. But that transition, I think we always go back to the things that we loved about our childhood. I, for one, love listening to the footy on the radio, because I grew up listening to sport on the radio. So I really enjoy that, because it provides me with maybe with a certain comfort, if you like.
Yeah, it all makes sense when you think about it, doesn't it? It's not, in a way, it's not rocket science, but it is.
It's probably a lot harder than rocket science.
Yeah.
We're dealing with abstract terms. I suppose a rocket has material things, and you know that this wire has to go in there or else it won't work. And with the mind, we're just dealing with abstract terms. But I think, there's a lot of theories out there. What I recommend to people is to find things that work for them, and there's no such thing really as normal in one way. Right. What works for you, that's normal for you, as long as we said, you're not invading other people's privacy, or you're not
hurting somebody.
Exactly. I think it's important to find things that help us be authentic to ourselves.
I'll try and be quick here, but with addictions too, like you mentioned about drugs and that, I forgot about that one. But with drugs and, say, alcohol, is that somebody using that, like they become addicted to it because they find it takes away their problems, sort of thing, for a short time or something? Or I suppose, is that how all addictions work, I suppose?
Yes. The thing about alcohol, right, is we've been drinking alcohol for many, many centuries, our species. So wherever you go in the world right now, you can take a plane and go anywhere in the world, and you will find alcohol. We have a certain affinity with it, just like coffee and chocolate, and also tobacco. We know that some of these things aren't good for us physiologically, but they've been around because they do something. Alcohol, for example, is wonderful for anxiety. So if you have one drink, it just decreases your anxiety. The problem is people who become addicted, then again, because that reward doesn't last too long, then they need to top that up again and again. So, and once you get to a certain amount, then it's actually harmful. But that first drink we find is a very good thing, if you like, that allows us just to take the edge of the anxiety. And anxiety is something that we all have because it allows us to react to the world. It makes us a little bit more conservative with our decisions. It makes us a little bit more aware. And the problem is that if one, like any other thing, if one then requires it all the time and starts increasing the dosage, then you'll find that each person then, each individual will require more and more each time to get that same effect. So
yeah, I'm with you.
Whilst it's not bad for us initially, even though obviously it's not good for example, our liver, it is definitely good for our anxiety. But in the end, it's like Aristotle said, again, 2,500 years ago, we have to find habits and things that we like, but they have to be in moderation.
Yeah, true. Yeah. You make it sound so simple when you explain it all. It's great talking to you, as always. And I can't believe the time goes so fast.
It does. And it's very important as well that I also have a bit of a disclaimer with regards to alcohol, that people that have problems with alcohol, they can't afford to have that one drink.
Yeah,
anxiety. They have to look at other things. For someone that isn't an alcoholic and they want to enjoy a drink every now and then with a mate or at a party, or if they want to decide, look, I'm going to enjoy like a beer or a scotch today because I'm having a good time and I'm an adult, I think that's not a bad thing. Now, if one has been an alcoholic, that can't be done. I always tell people that drink too much, you've already used up your budget in a way.
So allocation, so to speak.
Yeah. So once one uses too much of it, whether it's gambling or anything else, then you have to refrain from it totally. But the point is, I think, is to educate, especially the young people with regards to alcohol and so forth, that not necessarily to say, look, stay away from it totally because it's a bad thing, but to say, look, there's these things that are out there. Alcohol is legal, so we can't stop anyone over 18 walking into a place and asking for her beer. But we can educate them to say, look, it's not bad as long as you use moderation and that you have control over it up to the point that it continues to add to your life. Because if you go too hard on it, then it starts abstracting, and it's very hard then to go backwards.
Very true. Good on you. Always a pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to it each time. The time has got away, unfortunately. But hey, thank you again for your time tonight. It's great talking to you, as always. Always is.
Oh, my pleasure, Dave. I enjoy talking about these things, and hopefully, if we can reach one person, I'm happy.
Good on you, mate. Cheers. Have a great night.
You too.
Bye. That's Carlos Camacho, and he's great to talk to, and explains it all in layman's terms, which is even better.